I walked out of the courtroom. My hands were still trembling, from the cold and from helplessness. My brother, Maikida, sat on the bench in that same worn hoodie they gave him after the arrest. His eyes were empty. His lips were pressed tight, as if swallowing shame, anger, and fear all at once. The judge spoke the verdict: 2 years probation. He ignored the holes in the case. I turned to our lawyer and asked quietly, "Not enough evidence? Then why did they arrest him a week ago?" The lawyer only shook his head. A week earlier we learned about an anonymous tip. A packet of so-called evidence arrived. Photos, texts, messages. They claimed Maikida was involved in dealing drugs. It was too convenient. Phone messages intercepted. Witnesses who suddenly remembered seeing him at the scene. A few months back I would have imagined revenge as a shout in a dark stairwell. Now I know different. Real revenge is truth, public, brutal, undeniable. To expose those who profit from planting evidence, I needed more than police calls. I needed a full map, receipts, logs, witness testimony, surveillance footage that contradicted the official story. I began to collect things. Old neighborhood posts. Security camera clips. Statements from people who'd been too scared to speak. Journalist friends agreed to help. They warned me, "Don't do anything that could land you in jail." I promised them and kept promising myself. Revenge has to be honest or it becomes what you hate. Small details formed the puzzle. Odd payments on an officer's account, missing from his declaration. A witness who worked security across the street and vanished a week before the arrest. Neighbors who'd been silent for years hinted that these operations weren't one-offs. My plan wasn't about traps or framing. It was about exposing. Anonymous uploads. Meetings with informants. An independent TV crew. Human rights lawyers. We built the evidence so when we released it online and on TV, the lie would crumble. Then a cardboard box appeared at my door. No return address. Inside, a USB drive. Folder name, Operation_Clean_Hands. I plugged it in. Video clips. Audio recordings. Dated call logs between the investigator and private numbers. Documents with stamps. Receipts for cash. Deployments at strange hours. My blood ran cold. This wasn't courtroom fodder. It was a key to a locked chest. But caution hit me. Files can be forged. Who sent this? Who wanted us to know? Were we being set up to spread a new story? I hit record on my phone and spoke to the camera. If you see this, know one thing. I won't take revenge that makes me worse. I will lay out the facts. I will show how the machine works. If they think they can handle me, let them get ready. Outside, a train rumbled. In the hallway, a door slammed. The light in my room flickered. When I clicked exit, my phone froze. An unknown notification appeared. You're close. They know you found something. Be careful tomorrow at 7 o'clock. They'll be where you least expect. I didn't sleep that night. I read the files again and again. Each pass revealed a small new detail. A time mismatch here. A name that didn't match an official roster there. A receipt with a hotel name that, when I called, had no record of the booking. At dawn I met Lena, the reporter. She arrived with a thermos and stubborn eyes. She'd worked small exposes before and smelled conspiracies the way other people smell coffee. "We need verification," she said. "We publish and they silence witnesses. We verify and they can't pretend it's fake." We split the work. Lena took the recordings to an audio forensics person she trusted. I went to the neighborhood, walking the same blocks Maikida used to walk. I talked to people slowly, the way you remove a bandage, gentle, patient, careful. An old woman remembered a patrol car that always appeared when certain men walked down the street. A teenager confessed he'd been paid once to look out in exchange for cash and a promise of silence. The deeper I dug, the clearer the pattern. It wasn't just one bad apple. It was a system that liked easy arrests, easy records, shortcuts that kept stats high and promotions on schedule. There was risk in every step. The investigator we suspected wasn't exactly subtle. He had friends who were subtle enough. Once I noticed a sedan parked too long near my block, I stopped using my usual route. Once I found a note under my door, a single line, "Stop." I realized we were in their sights. But the idea had begun to spread. People who had been quiet started whispering to one another. An anonymous tip to an old woman who had seen too much turned into a call to Lena. A taxi driver who'd witnessed odd handoffs called me from a payphone. The files on the USB were not the only piece of the puzzle. They were the spark. We planned a staged release. Not reckless. Not dramatic for drama's sake. A legal packet for the press. Parallel releases to social media. A formal complaint with the oversight body. A petition signed by local residents. Every move documented, time-stamped, and cross-checked. We also prepared for pushback. Lena insisted on encrypted backups. Our lawyer set up a safe channel. I learned how to blur my metadata and how to ask questions without exposing the people who trusted me. 2 nights later I met the informant in a dim cafe. He spoke in fragments, eyes on his cup. They take the easiest target, he said. They get money from private deals. They need people who don't have lawyers. They need faces that won't be missed. He slid a folded paper across the table. It had a list of dates and times, matches to the movements in the USB files. That night I walked home under a sky that promised rain. I felt something I hadn't felt in months: purpose. This wasn't just about Mike Haida. It was about every face in that file. Every life they'd broken for convenience. We set the release for 1 week out. Enough time to verify. Enough time to rally support. But not so much time that they could cover their tracks. The morning before the release I checked my phone. No messages. No threats. Just the green light from the forensic lab. The audio was authentic. Lena smiled for the first time in days. The team felt like a small crew on the deck of a ship before the storm, anxious, ready, focused. At 6:50 a.m. I opened the front door to take a breath of air. A car idled across the street. It was the same dark sedan I'd seen before. No plates. No number, just a shadow. I took a slow step back. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number: "You pushed too far. Tomorrow will cost you." No signature. No trace. I locked the door and sat on the floor with the USB in my hands. Mike Haida was sleeping in the small room down the hall. He didn't know the plan in detail. He trusted me because he trusted that I would not become like them. I put the USB into a pouch and slipped it into my jacket. I whispered to the dark, "We do this clean. We do this loud. We do this right." Outside, the sedan turned its lights off and drove away. The next morning the world would wake to a story designed to split a city. We had evidence. We had witnesses. We had a lawyer and a crew. We had one more thing: people who finally wanted to be heard. I sat at my kitchen table and waited for 7 o'clock to come. 7 a.m. arrived and my phone lit up with messages. Lena sent the signal. The files went live. First on her channel, then mirrored by 5 other accounts we had prepared. The complaint packet reached the oversight office. Copies of the evidence landed in journalists' inboxes. In one push the wall cracked. At first the silence was heavy. No comments. No reactions. Just the feeling that something was watching us from behind the screen. Then it started. Shares. Angry emojis. Long posts from people I had never met. One man wrote, "They did this to me in 2019. Same officers. Same lies." Another woman wrote, "I knew my son wasn't guilty. Now I know who set him up." By noon, hashtag spread. News sites picked it up. The story had escaped our hands, and that was the plan. Once it spread wide enough, no one could bury it. But with attention came the pressure. By 2 p.m. Lena called me, voice shaking. They raided my apartment. Took my laptop. They're looking for the originals. I told her to get to the safe house. We had backups everywhere. But I felt my stomach twist. They were already striking back. At 4 p.m. my brother called. "They stopped me in the street," he said. "They asked questions, searched me, nothing found. But they said, 'Tell your brother to quit.'" I clenched my fists but forced my voice calm. "Don't react. Stay inside. Tonight we'll move you." Evening fell and the city buzzed with rumors. The mayor's office issued a statement, "We will investigate." But I knew what that meant: stall, distract, deflect. Real change wouldn't come from them. It had to come from proof too big to ignore. That night we met in Lena's safe house. Old peeling wallpaper, dim lamps, coffee gone cold. On the table lay printouts of the files. We marked names, dates, payments. The picture was sharper now, a network, not just one cop. At least 4 officers. 2 middlemen. And 1 higher official who signed the fake reports. "Do we release the next batch?" Lena asked. "Not yet," I said. "If we burn it all at once, they'll find a way to spin it. We need waves. Each wave stronger." Outside, sirens wailed. We froze, waiting for the sound to fade. When it did, Lena whispered, "You know they won't stop. They'll try to silence us one by one." I nodded. "And that's why we don't fight them in shadows. We fight them in the open. The more light, the safer we are." Midnight came. I walked home through streets that felt heavier than usual. Every shadow looked like a tale. Every corner like a trap. But I carried no fear, only the weight of the next move. Tomorrow would not just be about exposing lies. Tomorrow would be about making sure no one could erase the truth we had already set free. Tomorrow was all about locks and witnesses. We moved like a small army of careful men and women. Lena handled media. The lawyer handled filings. I handled people who still feared to speak. At dawn we delivered the next batch. This time it wasn't only files. It was names matched to bank transfers. It was timestamps linked to CCTV that contradicted officer reports. It was sworn statements from 3 former insiders who signed under oath. The newsroom exploded. Headlines ran like wildfire. Corruption ring exposed. Police officer paid to plant evidence. They used the poor to boost their numbers. Comments poured in. People started naming cases we never knew about. The oversight body could not ignore it. They opened an inquiry the same day. An independent prosecutor called for immediate interviews. I watched the headlines while my hands shook, but not from fear this time. From the weight of what we'd started. They struck back quickly. 2 men in plain clothes followed Lena's car. They waited outside her building. She left through the back and made it to the safe house. Another journalist had her phone smashed in a restaurant. Someone spread a rumor that the USB was fake. We expected that. We had counters. Every destroyed phone had a mirrored copy on encrypted servers. Every smear had a recorded alibi. Truth had an ugly sibling called denial, but truth kept better receipts. On day 3 an arrest happened. It was a small officer, the one who'd taken payments. Not the kingpin. Not yet. They booked him on charges the oversight office had raised after seeing our packet. He protested on camera, but the camera also showed the transfers. That night, men who once thought themselves untouchable gathered in some back room. They talked and cursed and planned. They thought the storm would pass. They didn't know the city had already woken up. We kept pressing. We released another clip, a conversation with a middleman who admitted to paying officers to clear cases. He was filmed talking about targets who won't be missed. The clip had his face. The clip had dates. The clip had the voice of a man who suddenly became very interested in making a deal. People started coming forward. A mother I'd spoken to earlier stood up in public and told her story on live TV. A taxi driver handed over cash receipts. A retired officer sent a letter saying he'd seen reports disappear down a desk and never return. The prosecutor subpoenaed the higher official. His office released a statement denying wrongdoing, calling the evidence selective. Then came footage from the USB showing him at a late-night meeting with the same middleman. Selective or not, the footage existed. The pressure mounted. Families of victims formed a group. They shouted at City Hall. They demanded resignations. They demanded a full audit. One morning the higher official resigned. He blamed errors in oversight and cited stress. The resignation was short. The headlines shouted resignation as if it were admission. But I wanted more than headlines. I wanted a system that couldn't repeat this easily. So we pushed for policy changes. We met with council members. We handed them a plain booklet. Steps to protect weak defendants, mandatory body cam retention, external audits every 6 months. Some politicians shrugged. Some listened. In the midst of the chaos, Maikaida got a visit from an investigator unaffiliated with the accused unit. She apologized, cautiously, formally, for what had happened in his case. She said the new evidence made them reopen files. She said they found holes. She said they would move to clear his record. When the news finally came, the official noticed that the charges were being reviewed. Maikaida cried for the first time since this started. Not from shame. From relief. I held him in the kitchen doorway while rain tapped the window. But not everyone paid for their crimes in court. Some retired quietly. Some were reassigned to desk jobs. Some faced internal reprimands with no criminal charges because statutes of limitation, messy paperwork, or deals made the clean path impossible. Justice is rarely complete. It is messy and partial. It is sometimes reform, sometimes resignation, sometimes a name on a list. The people mattered most. We opened a small legal fund for those who still needed help. Lena set up a hotline. Volunteers coached people how to document encounters. A local lawyer offered pro bono representation. That, to me, felt like revenge in the purest sense. Not ruin but repair. Then came the twist we hadn't expected. One of the middlemen, the one who'd been loud on camera and smug in private, came to my door. He asked to talk. He wanted a deal. His eyes were not the eyes of a man ready to fight. They were the eyes of a man who finally understood the shape of the net he'd helped weave. He provided longer recordings. He gave names I hadn't seen. He named a contractor who'd regularly funneled cash. In return, he wanted immunity and a chance to start over. I agreed to pass his file to the prosecutor. That night he left town with a convoy and new ID. I don't know if that is justice. I know only that his information put more pieces on the board. The public hearings lasted weeks. People testified. Some cried. Some begged for forgiveness. Some lied, and their lies were exposed under oath. The city changed in small ways. Some officers were charged. Some policies were rewritten. Some victims got apologies and settlements. Maikeda's record was cleared. He walked out of the courthouse with a lighter step. He hugged me in front of cameras and then pulled me aside and whispered, "You did it." I wanted to say, "We did it." But I also knew, the price had been a strange kind of sleeplessness, a constant feeling of watching shadows. Months later I sat at the same kitchen table, looking at the city through rain-blurred glass. People still argued about whether we had gone too far. Some said we'd ruined lives. Others said we had saved them. Truth makes strange things of people. I still kept the USB in a drawer. Sometimes I would take it out and look at it like a relic. It had started a chain reaction. It had not been perfect. It had not been simple. But it had shifted the balance. On a quiet evening, Lena called. She laughed, a short, brittle sound, and said, "They just announced a review of all old cases. Looks like your little leak turned into a river." I smiled without joy. Rivers erode rock slowly. They can also flood. Maikeda started working again. He painted apartments for people who needed small repairs. He volunteered at the hotline on weekends. He said he wanted to help others not fall into the machine. We never became heroes. We became inconvenient. We became a story some people told to feel good and others told to warn against meddling. But in small ways, in the lives of those mothers, the veteran, the teenager who spoke up, things changed. One night, months after the first files went live, I walked past the precinct. The building looked the same. The lights in the windows were routine. A patrol car rolled by. Nothing dramatic. Just the city moving on. I pressed my hand to my coat pocket where the USB lay. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. We had done what we could. Revenge had not been a shout in the stairwell. It had been hours of quiet work. It had been the slow, stubborn turning of a wheel. And for the first time in a long time, when I walked past the park where my mother used to sit, I felt able to breathe.